Well, I had no idea when I prayed that prayer that I was actually making myself available for ministry. But, sometimes God doesn't show us everything, does he, Pat? Because we'd run the other direction.
She wrote beautifully about her mother. She wrote about grief that had no words, about a woman whose spirit never weakened even as her body did, about a doctor in a hospital room who rededicated his life to God minutes before her mother's surgery, about a little boy named Judah who ran to hug her legs when she came through the door, and the moment she realized she would never again run to her own mother and say those same words. It was, by any honest measure, one of the most moving tributes posted in the aftermath of Joni Lamb's death. And Rachel Lamb Brown wrote every word of it, knowing that her brother was sitting in the front row at their mother's funeral, hidden from the cameras. Knowing he had not been called to the bedside, knowing he had learned his mother was gone from a corporate attorney, knowing a 5-year-old child had been at the center of a 5-year war inside this family that Rachel's tribute did not mention once. What Rachel said is worth hearing. What Rachel did not say is worth examining just as carefully. Today we are doing both. What Rachel actually said. On Mother's Day 2026, just days after Joni Lamb's death, Rachel Lamb Brown posted a tribute on Instagram that reached millions of people. She wrote that there were no words for the depth of grief she was carrying. She wrote that her mother had been the heart of their family, and that she did not know what life was supposed to look like without her in it. Then she shared the detail that stopped the Christian internet cold. In the weeks before her death, right before one of her procedures, as the anesthesia was being prepared, Joni looked up at her physician and asked him, if he died today, would he know where he would spend eternity? The doctor, by Rachel's account, rededicated his life to the Lord in that hospital room. Rachel also described the moment she came through her own front door and bawled. And her young son Judah ran up and hugged her legs, telling her he had missed her. In that ordinary instant, she realized she would never again be able to run to her own mother and say those same words. This is genuine grief. This is a daughter who loved her mother. Nothing in the complexity of what surrounds this family erases the realness of what Rachel felt and expressed in that post. But tribute and full accounting are not the same thing, and what Rachel's tribute carefully left out is the reason this story does not end with Mother's Day posts. The body that was breaking, and the camera that kept rolling. Here is what was happening to Joni Lamb's body in the months before her death, and how much of it the cameras captured. On April 6, 2026, Doug Weiss told the Ministry Now audience that Joni had injured her back. She was healing from 2 hairline fractures on her spine. That was the official line. That was what the partners were given. But longtime viewers had already been noticing things for weeks. Weight gain that did not match her usual frame. Visible swelling around her face and hands, speech that sounded slightly slower in certain broadcasts. None of it was addressed on air. The network kept producing television as if nothing was wrong. According to investigative reporting by the Trinity Foundation and Julie Roys, the situation behind closed doors was considerably more serious than 2 spinal fractures. A reported claim, traced to a family member at a private gathering, described a terminal cancer diagnosis. Daystar has not officially confirmed that claim. The network has said only that Joni was facing serious health matters she had chosen to handle privately. We hold that claim with appropriate care, but the pattern is undeniable. Something was seriously wrong, and almost nobody outside the inner circle knew the full picture while Joni was still up in air. What makes this section of the story genuinely complicated is the question of why. There is a version of this that is purely pastoral. A woman who believed deeply in her mission and chose to keep serving rather than withdraw. A woman who asked a doctor about his soul minutes before her own surgery. That version is real, and it carries its own kind of weight. And there is another version that asks harder questions about an institution that runs continuous fundraising, appeals to millions of viewers, asks those viewers to include the network in their wills, and kept its president on camera delivering those appeals while she was privately facing a terminal diagnosis. Both versions can be true simultaneously. The human dimension and the institutional accountability dimension coexist in this story and cannot be separated from each other. The phone that did not ring. On May 7, 2026, Joni Lamb passed away at her home in Texas. She was 65. Daystar released a polished statement saying she had graduated to heaven and been reunited with her late husband Marcus. Tributes from pastors, politicians, and ministry leaders flooded social media within hours. From the outside, it looked like a family unified in grief. Jonathan Lamb, her eldest child, was not at his mother's bedside when she died. He was not invited. He was not warned her condition had become critical. He was not called by his sisters. He was not called by Doug Weiss. He was not called by anyone in the family. His wife Susie confirmed it publicly on X. She wrote that they had not been informed of anything, that they had been literally down the road from where Joni was, that nobody had given them a single call to say goodbye. She added, "We forgive them." Jonathan learned his mother was gone approximately 10 minutes before Daystar made the announcement on social media. The person who told him was a longtime Daystar board attorney named Tom Callender, not a family member, a corporate lawyer, T. He man who had been publicly named by his own father as the future head of Daystar found out his mother was dead from the network's legal counsel. Rachel's Mother's Day tribute, however beautiful and genuine, did not mention this. The funeral and the front row. The memorial service was held on May 18th at Gateway Church in Southlake, Texas. It was led by Pastor Joni Franklin and featured video tributes from former President Donald Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and others. Daughters Rachel and Rebecca both spoke from the stage. Nicole C. Mullen performed. Jonathan and Susie attended. They were placed on the far right side of the auditorium, deliberately positioned away from the cameras, separated from the rest of the family. Jonathan was the only one of Joni's 3 children who did not speak from the stage. After the service, according to reporting by Julie Roys, Jonathan was not invited to his mother's burial. The only speaker at the entire service who acknowledged Jonathan by name with any warmth was a pre-recorded video message from the President of the United States, not his own sisters, speaking at the same podium. Joni Franklin's eulogy described Joni as a velvet brick. He spoke of her kindness, her strength, her fighter's spirit. He said that only God knew the whole story. He was right about that last part, but he said it from a stage where the son who had the most direct knowledge of what that story actually contained was sitting in the corner, off camera, not invited to speak. How the family got here. The child at the center. To understand why the front row looked the way it did, you have to go back to November 2020. According to reporting by the Roys Report, Jonathan and Susie's 5-year-old daughter disclosed to her mother that she had been touched inappropriately by a male family member. Susie has stated publicly that she brought this to Joni. Joni urged her not to go to the police, and that after a one-on-one meeting between Joni and the child, the little girl stopped talking about it entirely. Joni denied this account completely for the rest of her life. Then in August 2021, during a family gathering at a beach property in Florida, Jonathan walked into a bedroom and found a male family member, referred to in the original reporting as Pete, and subsequently identified by the Roys report as Joshua Brown, Rachel Lamb Brown's husband, alone with their naked 5-year-old daughter. Josh Brown has denied every allegation in detail and on the record. He told the Roys report he had never touched the child inappropriately in any way, ever, and described himself as living a nightmare. He reported a death threat to the FBI. The Colleyville Police Department opened a formal investigation and closed it in May 2025 without filing charges, citing insufficient evidence and the absence of a formal outcry from the child. The case remains open if new evidence surfaces. Daystar has stated that Josh Brown voluntarily took and passed 2 polygraph examinations. Polygraph results are not admissible in court and are not considered scientifically reliable indicators of truth. 2 sides, deeply opposed, a child in the middle of all of it, and a family that fractured irreparably over what happened and how it was handled. The recording that changed everything. In July 2023, Joni arranged a meeting at her home with Jonathan, Susie, and a well-known pastor named Jimmy Evans, who runs a ministry called XO Marriage. The stated purpose was resolution. Jonathan recorded the entire conversation on his phone. That audio recording later went public and reached more than 500,000 listeners. On the recording, Jimmy Evans can be heard telling Jonathan that his mother Joni was, in his exact words, the voice of God to him. He told Jonathan the only acceptable options were to submit or to leave. Staying and disagreeing was not on the table. That single phrase, the voice of God to you, became the line that exposed the entire dynamic for hundreds of thousands of people who listened. Critics, including Julie Roys and researchers who study spiritual abuse, have pointed to that audio as one of the clearest documented examples of spiritual covering being used to silence a victim's family. The concept is straightforward, and the recording makes it audible. The authority of the leader becomes treated as equivalent to the authority of God. To question the leader is to question God. Susie was subsequently pushed out of her on-air role. In November 2024, Jonathan was fired. The network said it was the result of a 15-month performance review. Jonathan said it was because he refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement that would have permanently buried the allegations. The termination letter was delivered by a security guard wearing a bulletproof vest. The Empire underneath the tribute. Rachel's Mother's Day post was posted on behalf of someone who co-led one of the most financially significant and least financially transparent Christian media organizations in America. Daystar's parent entity, Word of God Fellowship Incorporated, is classified as a church under federal tax law. This means it does not file a public Form 990, the standard financial disclosure document that most nonprofits must submit. It is not a member of the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability. Ministry Watch has given Daystar a 0-star rating for financial efficiency, an F grade for transparency, and a public withhold giving recommendation. The network's annual revenue has been estimated at over $100 million, its total assets at over $230 million. $35 million annually in viewer donations flowing into an organization with no public financial accountability. In Joni's final year, she personally owned 7 properties across our states worth approximately $11.7 million. She sold 3 and transferred 4 into a personal trust before her death. The Daystar Ministry jet, which Trinity Foundation's flight tracking estimated had cost approximately $769,000 in ministry funds on personal use flights, was sold. The network's legacy stewardship page continued encouraging viewers to include Daystar in their wills throughout all of this. These are the financial facts that sit underneath the Mother's Day tribute. They do not cancel the grief, but they belong in the same frame. What Rachel's words actually did. Rachel said at the memorial that if her mother taught them anything, it was that the most beautiful lives are not perfect ones. They are surrendered ones. That sentence is carrying an enormous amount of weight in a very small space. It acknowledges, implicitly, that the life being honored was not perfect. It offers a theological frame, surrender to God, that recontextualizes the imperfections as part of a story that still belongs to something larger. Some people will hear that as genuine grace. Others will hear it as a carefully chosen way of not addressing the questions that still hang in the air, about governance, about the child at the center of the family fracture, about succession, about financial transparency, about the son who was not invited to the burial. Both responses are understandable. Both responses are honest. What is also honest is this. The person who built this institution reportedly spent her final weeks leaving a private message with a board member she trusted. According to reporting by the Roy's Report, corroborated by Jonathan and Susie, that message was, if Jonathan tries to reach out, give him back Daystar. Both parents, in the end, pointed in the same direction. Marcus in his written succession directive. Joni in a whispered conversation from a makeup chair, in pain, weeks before she died. Whether the people currently running Daystar choose to, honor that remains, as of this broadcast, entirely unresolved. That is the full picture behind Rachel Lamb Brown's Mother's Day tribute. What she said, what she did not say, and what the documented record tells us about the institution her words represent. I want to know what you think. Do you believe Rachel's tribute reflects a genuine desire to move the family and the network toward healing, or does the context around it change how you hear it? Leave your honest thoughts in the comments. This community takes these conversations seriously, and every voice in the discussion matters. Subscribe if you have not already. Turn on notifications. The Daystar succession story is still developing, and when the next chapter arrives, you want the source to count. Thank you for watching. Stay discerning.